Now on to today's game changer topic, and we've touched on it a little bit. And I've gone with the big man on this one here because I'm learning a lot from him right now as we speak. But what is the broadcast landscape like for women's basketball in Australia?
Oh, it's a very broad question, Chris.
Mm.
Um, what's it like? Well, I mean, currently the WNBL streaming on Nine now, so I mean, make sure you get on board and give it a watch because it is obviously it is going great guns in terms of the talent that is coming out and joining the Australian athletes out there as well with some of the imports that we're getting. But look, I mean, Wednesdays on ESPN, it's great to
Mhm.
have it on TV and Jason Bennett, who will be, I'm sure, familiar with
Mhm.
many of our audience or many of your audience, Chris. I mean, he does the Wednesday games too, just a great job, and he's been a huge supporter of the league for a long time, Jason. So yeah, certainly. I mean, look, in terms of where it's at, I mean, it's a broad question you ask, Chris.
Yeah, I thought I wanted to poke the bear a little bit because
Okay.
there'll be opportunities in future podcasts to go a little bit more in depth. But we're looking at we cast our way back to earlier in the podcast. We were talking about how you had the one game on the ABC, so that
Yep.
you've got that limited exposure, not just for the players but callers as well. There's a limited opportunity way back when where if you wanted to call women's basketball, you had to get past those people to get the spots because there just wasn't spots available to match the games that were being broadcast.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and as we did mention, it's fantastic that now it is available to a free to our audience on streaming, albeit. And wouldn't it be great one day if there was more than one game a week on available on TV? That would just be terrific. But I think at the same time, I think often with calling, right, it's not necessarily about um, putting your name out to a wider audience. It's about honoring the audience that you do have, I think. And there's an amazingly loyal basketball community and passionate basketball community that every time you get on the mic, they're the people that I'm thinking of. It's like,
Mhm.
how do I bring the product, which is amazing, mind you, to the viewers at home and do it the justice that it deserves?
Do you find that because there's such a captivated audience in the male space with the NBL and the success of the Boomers? I mean, what the Opals have done is been absolutely incredible. But do you sort of think that maybe there's that opportunity to go, okay, well, I want to do this product justice and I want to make it sound like it's the biggest thing in basketball right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it certainly is. I think I honestly, I feel like we don't need to I suppose, convince people of that. I think it really is happening at a high level in Australia right now. Both our men's and women's programs are doing so well. But you know what? The battle probably is bringing that to the general sporting audience. And I think a major part of that probably is being on TV. And look, a great example is the World Cup when it came,
Mm.
the Women's World Cup that was in Sydney last year. I mean, that did some really great numbers on ESPN and what a broadcast team, they put together there. And I think that showed the potential of what it can be. And everyone obviously points to the Matildas because that was just, what a ride that was for that, 6 to 8 weeks. Yeah, it is a challenge and it's a very crowded landscape, as we know. And the AFLW and the
Mhm.
NRLW that have come to the table, they've only continued to make that space more crowded.
Yeah, it's certainly an exciting time if you are a fan of women's sports. You've had that radio exposure with women's basketball? Do you think we're going to start to see just a little bit more attention sort of given in that space, and maybe there's just more avenues that we can start to consume the sport?
I certainly hope so. I mean, I've season 3 now on streaming for myself, and I would love to see it be picked up by more general sporting fans. I'm certainly not the business expert in that space, Chris, as I'm sure you can appreciate.
I know I'm making you squirm here, but I appreciate the in depth and answers because
Yeah.
as a basketball fan, I mean, look, I've got to say as a women's fan, and I mean this podcast is all about you today, mate. But I'll digress to me just for a little bit. But for me personally, this year I had the pleasure of calling AFL, VFL, and AFLW across a range of different platforms. But for me, the most excitement that I got for calling any game was when I put the cans on for an AFLW game, because I just wanted that to be the biggest thing ever. And I was just so driven by seeing the success of women. I I had the chance to interview some players after the games, and for me, that was I built it up so big that I'd got starstruck based off my own build up of some of these players. And I think that's a good trap that we as callers can sort of get ourselves into. But I think it's good, with what you've been able to do in the women's basketball space, that there are superheroes out there, and you're telling the story to make them that big, and it's a
Yeah.
great thing to feel.
Look, I mean, you have made me squirm, Chris, because these are things that I haven't thought about, I suppose, until now, and I'm just clocking through it on my head. And I think to answer your question, I've always, as a pre-existing fan and a basketball fan, I suppose, understood the gravity of these athletes. I mean, our Opal stars, WNBA stars, they are amazing players, and I've known that, but it probably sometimes is important for me to reframe in my head that there's a lot of people out there that don't realize that. As basketball people, we know that,
Mm-hmm.
but often when just in my regular life, bringing up that I'm calling the WNBL, there's just not much of an awareness sometimes from
Mm.
people, which can be frustrating because it's not just a hobby, or this is a legitimately elite league that it would be, it would be amazing to have that be recognized in the general community more broadly.
Well, I was very fortunate enough to put the cans on for some big games as part of the National High School Championships, which, as of this date, for those who are listening, it is the week of the National High School Champs here on the Gold Coast. We saw one player who dominated. I think it might have, her name escapes me, but there was one superstar player who scored 35 points in a bronze medal game or a gold medal game.
Sure.
She'd already had the tap on the shoulder that, from based on her efforts in the lead up to that tournament and the tournament, that she was going straight to the WNBA as an 18-year-old at high school. And so we're talking about the magnitude of and that was streamed around the country. There's so much great talent out there. You may not get a chance to see them anymore because of what they're able to establish. So anytime you consume a women's basketball game, you could be consuming the future of the sport in the country at that very time, regardless of the level of competition.
Yeah, I feel like I am always trumpeting this to anyone who will listen, is that our pathways are elite. And I think we spoke earlier about the NBA and the allure around that. I think sometimes there's a misconception that it's the NBA and then it's just a mountain of cavernous space and then everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Clearly an athleticism gap, a talent gap. And obviously I'm talking the NBA and the WNBA in this respect. Our pathways are elite. We've had amazing players that have come through these very doors and gone on to those things. And sometimes it's, letting people know that, hey, this is an elite program and an elite pathway that, honestly, I would recommend for your own sake, you get down and think about LaMelo Ball, right? He's become just an absolutely, he's a massive celebrity and an all-star for the Charlotte Hornets. I mean, all of a sudden now everyone wants a piece of him. He's all over social media. When he was here, it's like it was big, but did people truly realize what he was going to become? I don't know if they did. So yeah, probably not. So maybe it's on us as storytellers to better put that out there, more accurately put it out there in a more consumable way to communicate that to people, that these competitions are very, very high level.
And I think in your case too, when we're talking about the growth of the WNBL, is that perhaps, hopefully, in the future, we might see basketballers over in America come over and do the same thing that LaMelo Ball did. And for those who aren't really across it, instead of going to college, LaMelo come over here to the NBL and played his lights out, and then got into the NBA system. So instead of doing the 3 or 4 years through college, he did his college baptism of fire in the NBL. Yeah. I'd love to see some of that siphoning in from the WNBA to come into our local competition, which is a caller for your sake. That'd be just amazing. You could see the future of the sport on a big international scale.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Australia Shores.
It's even better in the WNBL because they actually get a really high level of imports out, right? Like Kia Nurse, who won 2 championships at the UC Capitals, she was an all-star starter in the WNBA.
Wow.
So the imports are seriously the highest of levels. Now, obviously, your true, maybe absolute A1 superstars often go to Europe during the winter, but we've had some amazing, continue to get some amazing players down here to play in the WNBL.
And that shows the magnitude of every time you put the cans on, you are telling a story that is shaping the game in a big way here in Australia, because we're experiencing an evolution that we just have not seen in the sport. But I guess that would, for your sake, that probably make you feel really good that you're right in the heart of that, capturing that excitement on the cans, and as part of the element of storytelling, you're telling the story of the future today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's an important role. It really is, because I think, it's one of the things that people see when they first turn on a game. There's things like, the crowd, or the way the stadium looks, or what the caller sounds like. And the product on court can be world class and amazing. But if some of those things aren't up to par, then for the casual sports viewer who might not watch basketball or understand it at a high level, it might take away from the product. So as a caller, it's really important to try and meet those athletes somewhere close to the high bar they set.
And there's nothing better, I find, in the calling space, that you're seeing someone have a breakout game, and 12 months later, 18 months later, they're tearing it up on a higher level, and you were there, being involved in telling the story about how awesome this player was.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I think the stories that we come across, Chris, they are truly one of the highlights of it for sure.